Hello, Rebecca.
Hi.
Welcome to this interview. It's very good to have you here. Now, this interview is part of a series that you initiated for the International Attachment Network, which is called. It's a series of hopeful conversations to support families and schools to strengthen attachment during COVID-19. And of course, you and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and we're both on the executive committee of the International Attachment Network. And just a little word about that. It is a charity and promotes the fundamental role of attachment theory in all aspects of human connection. It was founded in 1992 by close colleagues of John Bowlby and is a membership-based educational charity led by experienced clinicians and researchers and academics in the field of attachment theory. Headquartered in the UK, but we have a growing international network now of at least 14 international chapters. And a little bit about Rebecca. Rebecca founded an organisation called Flourishing Childhood, and Rebecca is a level 2 aware parenting educator, currently the only one in the UK, and you'll say more about that, Rebecca. And your passion and skills lie in helping parents to find ways to discipline children without the use of punishments or rewards. You taught as a primary school teacher for 17 years, and you have 2 children aged 7 and 4, and you completed an MA in counselling in education at the Tavistock Institute, London, and you've also done a foundation course in Nonviolent Communication, which we've talked about before because it's so very powerful and helpful. So welcome, Rebecca. And perhaps if I've left anything out, I can ask you to say a bit more about yourself and also about aware parenting and what it is.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to interview me so I can share a bit more about aware parenting. So yes, I'm Rebecca. I was a teacher for a very long time, and in my classroom did all the punishments and rewards and timeouts and stickers, and never really was presented with another way of doing things. And it was when my daughter was 9 months old, and I was really at a loss of what to do. I think now we know she probably had birth trauma because it's evident on her teeth. A dentist recently showed her near-nasal line, which is indicative of birth trauma. So, we didn't know that at the time because it seemed to be a lovely birth, but she had lots and lots of crying and just never settled. And, you're getting all sorts of information that just didn't feel right. And somebody handed me Dr. Salter's book called The Aware Baby. And I read it and I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've been waiting for. And what was so amazing about it is it's based on sound research, neuroscience, nervous system work. So it just makes sense and can really be supportive in our parenting. I then went on to read all of her books and so loved what she was doing that I became an instructor, and now I'm a level 2 instructor, which means I can train other teachers. Just really briefly, Dr. Salter is an international expert in attachment and trauma, and I was fortunate to interview her last week. If you would like to listen to that interview on the IN website. And she really also struggled when her child was born to find information to support her with the crying and the tantrums and all these things that she intrinsically knew but just couldn't find any support on, and wanted to help other parents. So hence she wrote all her books, and she began the Aware Parenting Institute, of which there are teachers in over 17 countries now, and is just a really wonderful way to strengthen attachment with your child and also to reflect on your own childhood. In all of her books, there's always a chapter at the end of each chapter. Actually, there's a page that allows you to reflect on your own childhood, on your own attachments, on your own parent, how you were parented, and which is really helpful in changing perhaps old paradigms of parenting or old patterns of parenting from your own.
Because as you know, I work only with adults, and with adults, partners becoming parents, so often the confusion and the shock of becoming parents is greater because it's very little understood how one's own childhood impacts on the experience and the expectations of becoming a parent. So I think from an adult therapist perspective, that is such an incredibly important part of aware parenting.
Yeah, and I think it's just that unconscious aspect of things that we don't realize impact on so much. And that's why I love aware parenting, because it's conscious parenting, making these things more conscious
Yeah, yes.
in our lives.
And you were going to say a bit more about the three main principles, if that's the right word. The three main principles of aware parenting.
So Dr. Salter, when she began the Aware Parenting Institute, she started it with three main principles to help parents to support them in their parenting. And the first one was that of attachment style parenting. So this really is just the deep connection you have with your baby. Obviously, she recommends natural childbirth where possible. It's not always possible, breastfeeding for as long as possible, all those things that we know can strengthen attachment. But also the sort of sensitive attunements, which I think attachment of our own attachments are so important, because if we didn't have attuned parents, we really have to work on that to be more attuned to our own children. So it's just this ongoing attachment that you really try and foster and develop this relationship between your child and you.
Yes.
The second part is that of non-punitive discipline, the one I'm most passionate about, especially because I used this in my classroom for a very long time. I did work at an amazing school in London, which was a creative school, and they didn't use rewards and punishments. So I started to think about things a bit differently there. But then when I came across aware parenting, I was like, wow, we really don't need rewards or punishments. What we want is our children to intrinsically want to do things. And what we don't realize is when we use a reward or when we punish, we actually take that motivation away. And there's been so many research articles and that's based on this very fact. And actually, there's an amazing book called The Moral Limits of Markets, which Michael Sandel wrote, and it really looks at the broader scale of governments and organizations, how these rewards and punishments don't support people to really do their best.
I think, sorry if I can just interrupt, that's going to be really wonderful news for parents. Isn't it going to save them a lot of heartache on the punitive side and a lot of money on the reward side?
Yeah. It's really difficult because parents they can really sort of understand the punishment side, but sometimes when you go to the rewards, they're like, "What? I can't even reward them." But it's there are other things you can do, which I'll share a little bit later. Going on to talk about play and the magic of play with our children. But actually, and also to mention, rewards and punishments do work. They are a short-term fix. So parents often go, well, they work, what's the problem? But the thing is, the reward gets bigger and the punishment gets bigger, and eventually you run out of rewards and punishments. And so it really is about the relationship that you want to hold on to, that attachment.
Yes, which has a sort of infinite capacity to develop, as opposed to this finite, the limits of the reward punishment system that you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
So there's a third one. I've interrupted you.
Yes. So the third one, I can talk all day about the non-punitive. In fact, I know I'm going to share a little bit more about it with you, I hope.
Yes.
But the third aspect is the real healing effect of crying and raging and laughter in children. The thing that parents probably find the most difficult, not the laughter side of things, but this sort of this crying and especially the tantrums. I did a little question this week, and I just started with, when my child has a tantrum, I feel. And some of the responses were helpless, cross, exhausted, annoyed. All these feelings come up in us, which again is so important to think about our own attachments and how we were parented, because those feelings are probably coming from that place. But what I love about Dr. Salter's work is that she really breaks it down to a physiological stress response. So when our children are stressed, they store it in their bodies, and then they need to let it out. And sometimes they will just, have a tantrum, and sometimes they might have a tantrum over what appears absolutely nothing. So Dr. Salter calls this the broken cookie phenomenon. So what's actually happening is they sort of store, something happens, you look at them not very nicely, or then daddy shouts at them, and then, you made them their worst dinner, and, sibling hits them on the head, and kind of all these things accumulate. And then suddenly you say, oh, I'm sorry, you wanted this cookie, but it's broken. And they just flip their lid. They're literally, lying on the floor, screaming, trying to glue it back together, and that's not working. But it's not really about the cookie. It's about all those little things that need to come out. And our job really is just to be there as an empathetic listener, which is really hard. I'm not taking away that it's an easy job. It's really, really difficult to listen to those huge feelings that erupt.
And of course, the cookie cutter, the broken cookie, I was listening to this when you were talking to Dr. Salter in your interview, is if you think it's about the broken cookie, then you're going to be at a bit of a loss as to why your child is reacting the way they are. And you're going to be focusing on that as the problem and doing your best to try and understand it without any idea, as you say, that there's this sort of this iceberg effect of all the other stuff under the surface that your child hasn't been able to convey.
Yeah. And also children can't, they don't go, oh gosh, feeling a little bit upset, my brother hit me on the head and you weren't very nice to me. Instead, they also start doing irritating behaviours. They push your buttons, they do things you don't like. And what they really want you to do is set a loving limit with them. And I think that's where sometimes people aren't so sure about these alternative ways of parenting, because they think it's going to be permissive, but it's in no way permissive. What you're saying is you do have to set limits, but you can set them in a kind, containing way. So, we've had a couple of screen time moments this COVID-19 where we've had to set the limit and no more screen time, and there's a huge eruption, but it's not in balance with actually the screen. Lying, tantrums, screaming, stamping, slamming doors,
or you. Mm-hmm.
But I know that actually that's just all the stuff coming out. So I just support them. I'll sometimes just sit on the floor, and it's really hard. I know you want to have more screen time, but we're not having any of it any now. Big old cry. But it's really important to allow them to express those things and to set the limits. Children
You're not talking about this aspect too much, I know, but I want to say something just about limits, because it comes up such a lot in the work I do, because obviously clients end up talking about, I work a lot of half of my practice is with couples, so inevitably I talk about parenting. And this idea of limits isn't very well understood, but I constantly say this is what children need. They're not going to tell you, they're going to react like you've said, but it keeps them feeling safe and secure that you're in charge, that you know what you're doing as a parent.
Yeah.
And that feeling of safety and security is absolutely essential for them to be able to calm down and ultimately connect, be able to resume the connection with you.
Yeah, and especially when you think about this broken cookie phenomenon, you're actually really supporting them to release a lot of other things as well. So it really is important. I do love the term loving limits, because I think you actually want to be there empathetically listening, a bit like using the NVC almost. You're there to say, I can see how hard this, you really wanted that, but you can't have it, and empathetically being with them.
Yeah. And I think how you determine where to place the limits is probably outside of this interview, but is a very interesting area, and one that Aware Parenting speaks to and provides guidance on how do parents set these limits.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of advice on Dr. Salter's website, which is www.awareparenting.com, and she's written lots of articles, and all of her books are wonderful.
Are they?
Yes, I'd highly recommend Cooperative and Connected, which is from age 2 to 12 to support behaviour. And then there's the Aware Baby, which is for birth to 12 months old. And then she's also got Attachment Play, which is a wonderful discipline tool, which I'll talk a little bit more about.
Yes.
And also, if you really want to dive deeply into tears and tantrums, she's actually written a book called Tears and Tantrums.
And it just meant you mentioning the age appropriateness of the age relevance for these various books. Aware parenting applies presumably from birth.
Yeah, from birth to 12. And then, a book I'd really recommend going on from that is Parent Effectiveness Training. Wonderful book that supports you to really communicate in a non-violent communication way.
And perhaps you'll put these resources following that will accompany the video?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So those are the 3 principles of aware parenting. And I think the one that you wanted to focus on particularly today is on non-punitive discipline. So you'd like to say more about that, perhaps?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about it because it's such a difficult thing to do in our society because everything is based on punitive discipline, and rewards come into that. Schools have all these star systems, and the cloud down here, and then you've got to get to the rainbow, and if something happens, you go back down to the cloud. All these systems don't support a child to behave. They do momentarily, but what it doesn't take into account what is underneath that behavior. So with aware parenting, we're always looking at the underlying needs and feelings of the child, because those really tell us why the behavior is happening. And if we don't look at that, we'll never find out. And what they end up doing then is developing control patterns, which are things that stop them from feeling or stop them from releasing the emotions. So it's a really important part. Well, they're all important parts of aware parenting, but I think it's especially for parents who are so used to these systems of rewarding our children or punishing our children. It's really worthwhile looking a bit deeper at why our children are behaving the way they're behaving. I mean, actually, I've got a little sheet here that I wanted to share. Dr. Salter talks about the 4 different types of discipline. So there's the authoritarian violent, which is sort of spanking and hitting our children. But when we discipline in this way, what really happens is the parents win and the children lose. And then there's the authoritarian non-violence, which is when parents, still use rewards. They maybe use punishments as well. They use bribes, all that sort of way of getting their children to do things. But what actually happens then is parents still win and children lose. And it's not really meeting both needs. And then there's the 3rd type of parenting, which is permissive parenting, which is the one that I tend to go to my go-to, because it's really easier to do it that way. If you don't want to be authoritarian, it's much easier to go down the permissive route. And what you're doing there is you sort of really pleading with your children, nagging, kind of trying to get them to do things by being nice, but it doesn't make them feel very good. And what happens there is parents end up losing and children win. So nobody's
that's not good for them. No.
No, and I've definitely had lots of moments like that. It's been really hard for me to work on boundaries and creating that more democratic approach. So Dr. Salter suggests we use a democratic discipline approach. And this is really what aware parenting is about. It's about conflict mediation, so working it through. It's about thinking about needs. So what do you need? So, you really want to stay up a little bit later tonight, but I really need a little bit of space. How can we make this work? Talking about it and trying to meet both of your needs. And it's not easy. It takes a lot more time, but really what you're holding on to is the relationship and the strong attachments. She also says that children need to have their feelings listened to, and so in this democratic approach, instead of saying well, if you do that you'll get this, or stop crying now and we'll get a cake, or whatever it is, but actually just allowing those feelings also supports your child to feel more connected to you, and the more connected they are, the more cooperative they are. She also talks about natural consequences. So, for example, my daughter left her shoes out in the garden and the fox chewed them this week. So that's just a natural consequence. Like that was horrible for her. Like, I don't have to punish her now or say you can never get any shoes anymore, or if you don't do that again, I'll give you a cupcake, whatever it is. It's just that felt really, really crap. Sorry to say that happened, and she really was upset, and I felt disappointed as well. And that's enough. Yes. Just dealing with that natural consequence.
It sounds to me as though this is one very respectful of the child, and also respects that the child has some inner ability to modulate their responses. So it encourages them to have this sense of, oh, my mother expects me to be able to deal with this just a little bit in a manageable way, and it encourages them to grow and grow in the sense of they can do, rather than that permissive parenting, perhaps, where they don't feel that there are those boundaries, or the authoritarian parenting.
Yeah, it really is about respect for parenting. And I think it's a whole new paradigm of really trusting that children want to be good. They don't want to upset us. They don't want to be uncooperative. And actually, when they are being in that state, something's up. So that's like an alarm bell for us. Oh my goodness, something's going on for this child. How can I help them? And it's not easy. I'm not a perfect parent. I do yell sometimes, and I get upset and frustrated. But I think the other thing about this approach is this respectful respect between both of you. And I think that truly is how children learn respect. If you respect them, they will respect you.
I think probably this is where being able to discern between when a child is pressing your buttons or playing up and whatever, this is where parents probably have to reflect on their own feelings and think, where does this come from, and make the connections perhaps with how they were parented and what their response is to how they were parented, and then how has that impacted them now being parents.
Yes, I think again, like their response, when their response is not in line with whatever has happened, like the broken cookie, sometimes we get really upset about this behavior, but they're just being a child. Like 7-year-olds are annoying, they're chaotic, they're messy, I'm just thinking about 7-year-olds today because it's been quite a hard day, and that is very, very normal. So but when we come to the space, let's say an untidy room, and we start getting really worked up about this untidy room, and it's really worth thinking about why we're getting so upset about it.
Yes.
What did our parents do when we had an untidy room? Did they punish us? Did they get angry? Did they force us to do it? What saw that come to the surface? Because it should be just a lovely conversation. Gosh, this room's really messy now.
Yes.
What can we do about this? I can come help you tidy up if you like, or we can put a song on and tidy up together, or but often there's so much more coming behind.
Without that reflection, of course, all this baggage from the past is coming in that you don't realise is I think what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not an easy job, I can tell you.
Well, really not. But the fact that all of this reflection is encouraged by parents is a really critical part, it seems to me.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to really gather around a community of like-minded people who are doing this, because the more you do it with other people, the more that you can encourage each other and talk about it. I did a lovely workshop last week on a type of play I'll share called Nondirective play, and I put everybody into little breakout rooms, and they had to share their feelings about play. And I chatted to one dad afterwards, and he said, oh gosh, I was really dreading that room of going in there and having to share my feelings. And he said it was so amazing, because afterwards he just felt so normal. He said it is really hard and we're all struggling, and actually what can we do about it? So it's really important to get support and help, and surround yourself by people who are doing it this way.
And realise they're all in the same boat. That's the power of groups, isn't it? And you have a Facebook group, I think, with followers that is one way in which you create that community, perhaps. I don't know if you have other ways, but I assume
we've got a lovely group, and I actually have a free parenting group on a Friday, which anybody's welcome to come and join, and I just talk about aware parenting principles. And I also hold a free listening group on a Sunday morning, and mums just come along and we share.
Yes. How do people access those?
So you can contact me on Flourishing Childhood at www.flourishingchildhood.com, and everything's on there, or always you can email me. But I'll share a little bit more about that at the end as well.
Yes. Great. Was there anything you wanted to say more about the non-directive, no, help me out. What was it?
Non-directive play.
Non-directive play, that's what yes, right, yes. Was there
Um,
anything else you wanted to say about that at the moment?
Yes, so non-directive play is a wonderful way that can support non-punitive discipline. But what's really important to remember is that there are actually 3 reasons why children actually misbehave. So Dr. Salter has written an amazing article about it and written it in her books. But there's actually 3 main reasons, and it always comes down to these 3. The first one is that they have an unmet need. So this could be something simple like being tired or hungry. But obviously, if you look at Marshall Rosen's website, you can download a whole list of needs, and children have the same needs, especially at the moment. They might need community or connection with other, their same age. So there's lots of needs not being met at the moment. One thing this morning is I spent about an hour with my daughter, and then her sister came in, and her behavior just went off the wall, and it was highly annoying. But I eventually figured out what it was, and I said to her, I've noticed that when supper came in, you started to feel like that. Is it because you didn't want it to be here? Yes. So, that was the need. And once we'd spoken about it and then we just had a big hug, it felt a bit better. So jealousy was the feeling there. She was feeling really jealous and needed just me to herself. So the second reason why children misbehave is just a lack of information. Sometimes children don't know, and also they need to be told a lot of times. That age-old saying, but I've told you 500 times. You actually have to tell them 500 times because they do forget. So that's really important. And especially at the moment, there's so much lack of information. They don't know when they're going back to school. They don't know when they're seeing their friends again. We don't know when we can see my mum again. There's lots and lots of things that children don't understand about this.
And I guess that you haven't got any answers for them, but just to say that you don't know, at least lets them know where they stand.
Yeah,
presumably.
Absolutely.
If you don't know the answers, it's okay to say, I don't know the answers, but I think it's this, and we're keeping up to date with the school and whatever, to just give them the information you do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And then give them some hopeful things as well, which is really helpful. And then the third reason why children misbehave is this sort of third aspect of aware parenting, which is this need to release stored up stress through crying, raging, and laughter. Have I said that right? I've gone a little bit blank for a moment.
Rage, crying, and laughing. Yes.
I don't know how I can go blank. I share this so many times. So actually what they need us to do then is set a limit. So they could, have a big cry, or perhaps we just need to recognize that when they're having that tantrum, it's because they need to have it. It's a physiological stress response. Their body needs to release it. And there's lots of work on that now that you can read up on. The body keeps a score by Bessel van der Kolk, I think it is, and Peter Levine's work and Stephen Porges's work. This really is a physiological need for us. We need to release stored up stress. So that's what they're busy doing. And so setting those loving limits can help them, and just being with the big emotions. And then the third way is laughter. So that is a lovely magical way we can help our children, because all that laughter that comes up is another way to release stress and to release trauma.
You're very passionate about play, and this is perhaps where the laughter comes in. Play as a tool to supporting behaviour and healing stress and trauma. What you're talking about with aware parenting is about supporting children's behaviour and also healing stress and trauma. So it has those two aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And the play is such a magical one with the laughter.
So you can say a bit more perhaps,
So Dr. Salter wrote a book called Attachment Play, and basically it's you as a parent can bring therapeutic play skills to your child, to your home. Of course, not to mention, I must mention, if you're struggling and you can't cope with something that's happening, do get support. There's amazing play therapists and support out there, because sometimes we can't manage it and we're too triggered. So that's really important. But just for sort of the run-of-the-mill small stresses, and that you can really support your child, like, visits to the dentist or a small medical procedure or COVID-19. You can use this type of play to support them. So the number one thing I suggest is non-directive play. So this is a really lovely way that we can connect with our children, and not only does it help heal stress and trauma, but it also helps our children to connect and then behave and cooperate as we would like them to. So basically, it's just simply one-on-one play with your child. So we dedicate sort of Hoppers Day to Hoppers 9 every morning. My husband has one and I have the other one, and then we swap over, and they get to choose whatever they want just with us. So what did I do this morning? I had to make a stage curtain for the Sylvanians because they're putting on a theatre production. And then with my other daughter, we wrapped loads of stuff up as presents, and then we had to give them to all the little animals. So we had to keep wrapping them and then opening them.
Oh, sweet.
So it's just lovely connection. And when we don't do it, we do notice a difference in our day. It just helps them fill that cup of connection with you. And with connection, you do get cooperation.
And I think you said you're able to make half an hour a day at the moment. And I know Dr. Salter was saying in the interview, half an hour a week is hugely transformative, but half an hour a day, even exponentially so.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, we weren't managing to do it other than the weekends. So we just always had it on the weekends. But doing it every day, I can see why she suggests doing it every day, because it is transformative. Yeah. But if you can do it once a week, that's just amazing as well. And the other thing about it is they also bring little stresses to the play. So for example, my daughter, when she was about 3 and a half, no, she must be about 4, because I had my 6-month-old baby, and I was trying to get on the escalator, and I just had the baby and I held on and I left my 4-year-old behind. It was horrible, and I just was going and I didn't know what to do, and a kind lady took her hand and brought her down, but it was quite upsetting for her and me. And literally about 4 months later, I said, I've got some time for play for you. What do you want to play? And she said, this, and we were playing something. And then she suddenly went, let's play escalators. So I was like, okay. And she started playing a game where I left her and she left me, and then we came down together, and all the sort of scenarios that happened. And in my head, I was like, perhaps that's from that escalator time. So they do bring little things that they need to heal. And that lovely video that I made the other day was my daughter, my 4-year-old. She had a traumatic pass the parcel incident where she didn't understand the game, and she was at a party, and then everybody started shouting at her because she had the parcel and passing it. Children were like, pass it.
Hold on to it. It's fine.
And she really had a big cry. She was so upset. But often in our games, we play pass the parcel. So you're not really supposed to analyze your children. It's very hard for me, but it's just about being with them in that time and allowing them to bring what they need. Yes. I've actually got a free workshop on the 16th of May, on a 2-hour workshop on this type of play, because it's such a huge topic. But then there's not only the non-directive one-on-one play, there's regression play, so allowing your your child to regress. So if they're a 4-year-old and they want them to be a little baby, just lovingly giving them what they need that they maybe never got at that time, or may just need to go back to that time. Because parents
particularly presumably, sorry, I'm interrupting you again there, but particularly regressive play might be handy if they've had a new sibling born.
Yes. So when my baby was born, my daughter played non-directive play every single day with us, and she chose to be a baby every single day. So it's really important, especially at that time. But also when they've been through sort of trauma, the stress of this time, children might need to regress, and it's really important to allow them to do that. And then there's lots of other play, like symbolic play. We've got a Playmobil hospital, and my children created a 12-hour game the other day surrounding this hospital. There's contingency play, the mirroring games where their behavior is contingent on your behavior, which really fills their power cup. And that helps support their behaviour as well. But
I hadn't realised there were so many types. I mean, perhaps there's it's a very creative field where there's all different types of play
yeah,
developing. How many categories are there, would
Dr.
you say?
Salter's got 9.
9.
9, yeah.
Yes, it just shows there's a lot more to this, to play, than the word play suggests.
And each type of play has got a therapeutic value to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we play yesterday. Actually, I was a bit grumpy yesterday, and maybe scared them a little bit because I was grumpy. It's scary for children when you're angry or not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a whole play box over here for my play workshops that I do with parents and children. And they got all the dinosaurs out, and they like stuffing up my bra and go, they're just checking your bra to see if it's done up, and then they stuff a big dinosaur up there, and then I go, how did that get there? And they just laugh and laugh and laugh, and it's that laughter that lets out all the uncomfortable.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it's really magical, actually. So actually, we have spiders and scorpions around the house, and they will often play that game.
Nice surprise. Open the airing cupboard to find one of those. Lovely. Yeah. I think you wanted to talk a little bit too. It might be helpful to talk about what's particularly helpful that you find with your children and that you're saying to other parents about this time of lockdown where the children aren't at school and they're missing their friends and the parents have them at home full time.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the power of play. It's really important to play as much as you can with your children. I know they probably want you to play with them all the time anyways, but if you also provide this one-on-one play I was talking about, it gives you a little bit of space, because the more connected they are, the more space they give you as well. So that's
important.
Really, really helpful. And just lots and lots of games about separation can be really useful, because this is a huge separation we're going through, separation from everything we've known, separation with masks. There's lots and lots. So games like hide and seek, peekaboo, chasing each other, stuck in the mud, all of those are separation games. So playing lots and lots of those can be really helpful. And just also important to acknowledge that if children have had separation trauma, this separation may bring up lots of feelings for them. So the more you can play and listen to big tears, it can be very healing at this time.
And separation play is one of those 9 categories, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's really good for us at the moment is lots of another category is activities with bodily contact. So lots of being stuck together, rolling around on the bed together, acrobatic yoga, all those things where you're being really physical. My children love the cushion game, so they sit behind me and I go, oh gosh, this is such a comfy cushion, and they sort of push me and kick me, and not hard, but it's kind of like and I go, oh, it's a massaging cushion, wow, where did this come from? And then I look behind and I go, oh, it's you there, and they just love it. So it's kind of a separation game and a physical contact. There's lots of lovely things we can do.
You make it sound a lot of fun, but you have said that it can be hard work and a bit boring, but it does sound that they give you the space, they collaborate more. So in the longer term, everything ends up a bit easier, and the kids are certainly happier and healthier.
Definitely. And, this is the International Attachment Network we are sharing for. It really strengthens attachments. But I think it's worth saying that you can't do any of this stuff unless you look after yourself. That is the foundation of it all, making sure that your needs are met. Dr. Salter, in her book, she's got a whole list of needs that we need to think about and to look after ourselves. I love Dr. Neufeld did a lovely video on parenting through a pandemic, and he was talking about our emotional playground at this time. And I've really taken that on board, like finding what gives me joy, what helps me express my feelings at this time. So I seem to have taken to music and just dancing wildly with the children. I often talk about the small little things you can do, like making yourself a lovely latte that you love, or just putting your feet up for 5 minutes, or feeling your feet on the grass. And then there's the bigger things like doing a yoga class, or doing something that you're passionate about or fills your cup.
Well, coming back to my sort of work, this is where parents are such caregivers, and you've got to get that. You've got to receive care, otherwise you'll just exhaust yourself, and then you're not you don't have the resources for the rest of life, and your children, very importantly. So that being able to receive care, give it to yourself or have it from another person is so essential. Another person or persons is so essential. What you're talking about there, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that is why I found the last few days hard, because I've had so much on.
Mm-hmm.
I've neglected, just doing some little things for myself, and it starts to impact. And then I find it harder to play. I'm just a bit more grumpier. I can't really listen to those tantrums. So being kind to yourself as well, because that's normal, but recognizing it and then thinking, well, what can I do? And I'm a big fan of timetables. So put it in on your timetable. I'm going to have 5 minutes by myself. And so if you're living with your partner and you do have support, then you can say, this is what I want to do. And if you're with your kids, put them in front of the screen for 10 minutes. So you can do that. If that means that you're going to be able to nourish yourself, to be able to support them better, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's really important to take care of yourself, that you can parent in this way.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. It's been a really enjoyable experience, and I've learned so much more from talking to you today, listening to Dr. Salter yesterday. You've made some fabulous recommendations about books and other people who support the work and underpin what you're talking about. And then you mentioned a free workshop you have in 2 weeks' time. Do you want to just tell me a little bit more about that, and then perhaps we can finish?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I've just got a free workshop on non-directive play, and it's on the 16th of May between 2 and 4 p.m. And you can see it on my website, www.flourishingchildhood.com. And every Friday night, I said, I have got my free parenting group. Come along and learn more about aware parenting and meet with like-minded parents. And I've got my Facebook page, Flourishing Childhood, as well as Instagram. So just come along and share, and we can really support strong attachments with our children.
Create that community that you said is so important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much. And I'm sure those who listen to this will take a tremendous amount from it, and there's so much more to it. But the play is an important part right now to help people.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, one more thing to say. I think as parents, often the tears and tantrums do trigger so much. So I always say, well, at least you've also got the play. So start with that and then research on the tears. There's so much interesting work understanding where tears come from and why they happen. But you can really use play so much more that can support your parenting in this way. Yes. So thank you.
Yes. What valuable information. Thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you for your time, Nicola.